What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. Well, in today's video, we are going over Solana as its price has made an absolutely insane move over the last 24 hours. We saw in the last video that it lost one of its utmost key important levels of support, being the 786 level around $149. And right now, it does seem as if it's trying to recover that level and see if it can recapture some of those lost levels. I mean, that's an absolutely hard thing to do. We've seen multiple times that when a crypto will come down past its 786 Fibonacci level, that it will resort back down to wherever its base macro low is, which is around $116 in this case. But the fact that Solana is making a turnaround with the rest of the market does show that it is moving with the market, and it does show that if market conditions allow, we definitely could see some growth very soon here, and so it is getting extremely exciting. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at when some good buying opportunities are going to be, what I am expecting to happen, and how I'm going to play this thing. So of course, let's go ahead and let's get straight into it. So looking at Solana right now, we have two key levels, realistically three things to be paying attention to, okay? Now, on a more macro sense, we have this long-term descending wedge. Now, generally speaking, a more macro long-term descending wedge is going to have a bullish resolution. They are usually going to be bullish accumulationary patterns in which we will eventually see that break to the upside. Now, does that come after an 80% correction to the downside? Sure, it's always possible. So it doesn't mean it's a good thing, but it does usually have a bullish resolution to the top side. Now, in our case, considering the fact that we are still hovering around some very strong levels, around 115 to 100 bucks, I am still under the belief that we can see that bullish resolution and see us put in a new all-time high before, the middle to the end of the year for sure. Now, looking at this thing from more of a zoomed in version, we have two things to be paying attention to. Item number one, of course, thing number one, whatever you want to call it, is going to be this downward sloping trend line that started on about December 27th that we touched not only once, twice, three, but four times and are looking to break out of right now. Now, of course, what we have seen in the past is that as we do break out of some of these short-term downtrends, that usually can be a sign that we may resort back up to some of these crucial levels, up to the 200s or even some of the higher $190 levels. So what we need to pay attention to is, does this seem like a setup to allow us to see some growth back up to the top side to possibly see that bullish resolution? Or is this something that may just be a bit of a fake out to the top side that can lead to a continued growth in a fall to the downside? So the way in which we're going to determine that is kind of taking a look at all of the important levels and some of our indicators. But I would like to start with our indicators because they are seemingly pointing at something extremely bullish. Now, what we're looking at first and foremost is going to be the daily MACD. Now, looking at the MACD on the daily charts, we can see that we are approaching a bullish blue-orange cross, which will likely take place if we do continue upward trajectory in about roughly 2 days, roughly. Now, looking at the last couple times we did see these bullish crosses happening, we saw one back here, and then we did see one all the way back right here. So it's not something that we see super common. We've only had two of these crosses in the last realistically 4 months or so. And so usually what we see from that point forward when we do get that bullish MACD cross is bullish momentum, right? We start to see that continuation to some of these key levels of resistance. And then from there, that is of course the moment in which we will start to see either the breakout into a new all-time high, as we did see here, or a continued rejection from the top side that gets pulled back to the bottom side. So overall, based off of the MACD specifically, it definitely does seem that if we can keep up this good momentum, that over the next few days, we will get this bullish blue-orange cross, which will definitely serve as a strong momentum case and bull case for us to push back up to some of these higher, maybe $180 to $190 levels. Now, looking at the RSI, one thing we always like to gauge when we start to see green moves like this is this supported by our relative strength index? Because what we've seen in the past is if, for example, we take the high in which we set back here, what tends to happen in a move in which is not supported by the relative strength index is that we will start to see what's called a bearish divergence, in which we see something along these lines, which our RSI sets a high. And then if we compare that to our most recent macro highs, we can see that in this example, right here, these two highs that we put in, realistically, we're setting some of these higher highs from point A to point B, and we're setting lower highs from point A to point B on the price. So since we're setting some diverging highs in the price in comparison to our RSI, that's bearish divergence, and that typically means that the move in which we are seeing is not supported by bullish strength or enough bullish strength to be continued and will likely result in some type of fall to the downside. Well, what's beautiful is the fact that as we have been seeing this push back to the upside, we are actually moving in coordination direction and in tandem with our price. As our RSI has still set, some of these lower highs, and it's not really getting overextended into any of these levels, we can see that it is also still working in tandem with the price, as we are still setting lower highs here as well. Because if we were seeing this RSI start to work its way back maybe up towards this, 50 level or something of that nature, while still setting lower highs here, that would be a sign that it's moving too fast, and the likelihood is there's a pullback on the way. So although it is getting a little bit ahead of the price in terms of the steep, the slope of these highs, it does seem as if it's still moving very well in comparison to what we've seen over the last few weeks, and that could be a continued sign of strength as we do go forward over the next couple days. So overall, based off the MACD, based off of the RSI, it does seem like this move is supported by our indicators, and it definitely has the potential to see the the move back up towards the top side of this channel to hopefully see that bullish resolution to the top side. Now, in order for us to play this, now that we know, okay, this definitely looks good and it seems as if it has the foundation to get to that point, so how exactly do we play this? Well, personally speaking, since we are still sitting within this Fibonacci 618, of course, to 786, let's get this drawn up. There you go. You can see between our 618 to 786 zone, between $147 and $170, I'm not doing too much while we are in this zone. The reason being is that we've lost it already, right? We came down and we lost it. So at this point, we are still seeing this now serve as resistance. So until we are able to clear this zone, realistically at any given point, this may just be a backtest of resistance that is followed by the push to our $116 macro low. That is still on the table until we get back above $170. But that does not mean that no buying can happen, but I definitely won't be doing any mass accumulating while we are still within this range. Now, looking at a more of a short-term perspective, I do think that I personally wouldn't really be doing any buying at all until we were at least capable of seeing a push, above this 20 simple moving average on the daily charts. Now, the reason I say that is because historically speaking, we've seen that this 20 simple moving average has served as a key level of resistance and support on our way up, as we can see here on our way up, and we've run into it as resistance on our way down. And what I don't want to see is that although we did see this breaking of this downward sloping trend line, that we see something of this nature in which the price breaks out, runs into this 20 SMA, and then we continue back to the bottom side around this $130 level, and we were getting caught up buying on the breakout. I would definitely much rather see that we are able to get above this 20 SMA, because if we are able to, I am then under the belief that we will come back to retest this downward sloping trend line that looks like on a more macro scale, and then from there I think that's when some of the more mass accumulation starts to happen, because realistically I am under the belief that at some point we are going to see some pretty substantial growth from Solana, and I think it's only a matter of time before that happens. Now mind you, this is totally reliant on what the rest of the market does, and we need to see Bitcoin working its way back up to those $50,000 to $52,000 levels realistically before any of the market can really wake up. But I am still under the belief that Solana has that potential to see mass growth, and the biggest mass accumulating that I would be doing is if we are able to break this downward sloping trend line on the more macro descending wedge. Because at that point, one of the most strong levels of resistance would then be below us, hopefully establish that support, and then from there we can really start to look to see this thing push maybe 300, 400, 500. And so that's why it's so important that we're able to get back above this 20 SMA, because if we're able to get back above it, it opens the door to retest this level of resistance, which could be that moment that we start to finally break it. Now, based off of, looking at Solana versus the Bitcoin pair and Solana versus the Ethereum pair, we can see here that in relation to Bitcoin, Solana does seem to be holding up very well on this key level of support. We did see this fake out to the downside, which does usually entail some type of breakout to the upside, but overall we are not there just yet. But it is very nice and validating to see that we are holding up well here, and that although it may still be another month or 2 months before we do get that mass breakout, Solana does seem prepared to make a massive move in comparison to Bitcoin, in which we see it outperforming substantially. It's very similar to what we saw back here. Now, if we look at Solana versus Ethereum, it is a very similar story in which we are holding up extremely well. We're accumulating, we're starting to see consolidation, and I am under the belief that we will see a bullish resolution of this, which looks like Solana again mass outperforming Ethereum. So considering that everything does seem to be pointing back in bullish territory now that we are recapturing this key level of support and that we lost, I do want to see that on the daily charts we are able able to close above $150. If we can get that daily close above $150, that will be confirmation number one that we are making that approach up towards this 20 simple moving average. And then again, confirmation number two is that we get above it. If we get above it, I think taking on a short-term trade from, maybe around $160 up to this top side trend line, which could look like about 20 to 15% in gains. I definitely think I will take that on with a stop loss around $145. But of course, that is something I will continue to update you on as it does play out. So right now, we are seeing fantastic moves. Just to sum it all up, we are seeing fantastic moves from Solana right now. We've broken out from the downward sloping trend line on more of a short-term perspective. We have also recaptured our macro Fibonacci level. And at this point, it comes down to, can we close above this trend line? And can we go back up to recapture this 20 SMA? If we are able to do so, I am going to take on a short-term trade from SMA to topside resistance, as well as look to mass accumulate in the event in which we do see a breakout of the top of our descending wedge. So overall, I hope you guys did enjoy today's analysis. It was a little bit more in depth. It was a little bit more detailed and fast. And so I'm sorry that I had to force so much information in there, but I want to make sure I can give you guys my full perspective, especially when things are happening this fast. So of course, if you did enjoy today's video, you can always let me know simply by smashing that like button and subscribing to the channel if you are new. And I will see you all next time. Peace.